The only thing hotter than your stock price this morning, Mr. Linton, is your phone, as you deal with, I'm sure, plenty of texts and questions that are coming in from everybody that you know right now. How did this deal come together?
Well, maybe even to your first point, what I like the best is stock was down yesterday, stock was down the day before. That probably means that we did a good job of not talking. And when we did our last deal with Constellation, it was the same thing. So part of the thing the marijuana trade needs is actually to professional up, which means you don't talk about deals before you're done deals, and I think we're a good example of that. The whole Constellation thing, we've been talking and working with these guys for about 2 years. The first investment took almost a year from the time we began talks until it came in. This one's happened a bit more quickly in a sense in terms of time from their discussion with us to doing it. And that's because we work together every week. Like, we know these guys well. They are hardcore entrepreneurs. They get that this is a medical business and a consumer packaged good business, and that you have to do both or you lose. So think of this as $5 million, billion. I keep saying million. I got to learn that billion word.
Yeah, there is a difference there.
It's one of those things. It's an easy mistake. About 4 years ago, I was panhandling for investors. So it's a progression you have to get used to.
Okay, so you use that word "not talking." In other words, nothing leaking out about this. I mean, we had you on Monday talking about this delay in the brick and mortar rollout here in Ontario. You seem to be at the time taking that in stride. I will assume maybe that's in part because you were getting pretty close to this deal coming together.
No, I took it in stride, and you'll notice on that day I was wearing a T-shirt, no blazer, and if you could have seen, I had, I think, Chevy running shoes. So I didn't know that announcement was coming out because I was pretty busy working on this. No, that's just like a thing. I think we'll deliver great in Ontario. We'll talk in a year, and you'll say, my God, what an amazing outcome this has been, that they created these really numerous stores properly located, because by that time, maybe a year from now, we'll be delivering, I would hope, a set of beverages that are cannabis driven, that don't deliver the calories but do create what you want for your Friday night, and that's where Constellation will help. The rest of the money, though, think of us as going global. I don't need to buy any production companies in Canada. So if your viewers are saying, well, I think I should sell Canopy and buy a few of these other companies because they're going to buy them, that might not work out. But if there are global business opportunities, that's where we're going.
Okay, and so you were asked on the conference call about some of those global opportunities, and you guys have already explored the landscape in Germany and Australia, a whole bunch of markets. But it does sound like you're going to be pretty busy over the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, can you give us a sense on how much of that money could be put to work in that global expansion?
Sure. We're in right now 11 countries on 5 continents, and what's happened is, we're used to it now in Canada. This topic's been around for 5-6 years. This is the front page news for England. It is a big political topic for Greece. It's something that Spain's trying to figure out, how do they change. Czech Republic's there, Australia, Brazil, everywhere is doing it. And so what we're finding is the reason we wanted the cash now is the public policy of Canada is being copied, but it's not being copied like one country after another. They're looking at what we're doing, and about 29 countries are saying we should do the same thing.
Yeah.
And when I say the same thing, it's create a medical platform, which may or may not lead to a recreational platform, which means my target addressable market is, probably somewhere north of 20 times the number of people who are in Canada are in these other countries under federally regulated programs. So we want to, be at the front of all of that.
It does feel like an arms race of sorts, and I wonder, for the alcohol companies that have been looking at this area, is that part of the reasoning why Constellation would more aggressively make this announcement with you guys today? We just saw Molson Coors with their hydropothecary deal. I mean, it feels like decisions have to be made, and made quickly right now.
Yeah, and our decisions are things that we've developed over a couple of years together, so it probably feels more quickly to you than it does to us. But we are a massive disruptor, and when you talk about competition, it's not going to be the little names that are running around in the marijuana trade in Canada. The competition that's going to happen as this plays out and becomes federally legal and real are going to be big alcohol and big pharma, because we disrupt their worlds. And when it's the fast growth space, what I want to make sure is that we are partnered up and going fast early, because there's going to be a lot of capable parties come in, and if we have a whole lot of intellectual property and a first mover advantage that's best mover advantage,
yeah,
I like it.
So it starts as a 10% investment by Constellation. Now we're up to roughly 38% here. Maybe it gets even closer to 50%. Will there be a day when Constellation buys all of Canopy?
Well, I guess that's the bet, right? So, you know, they basically just paid a little more than $5 billion for a little less than 25% more of the company, which is, you notice how I got billion correct there that time. Then what they have is a warrant that could get them to about 50% at a premium to the price they're paying for this. So call it another $5 billion. And then I suspect if the company's doing what the company should be by then, which is generating really diversified, substantial EBITDA, if I were them, you don't want to consolidate up losses, but you probably would really love to have the ownership of a fast growth, high margin business, particularly if it's disruptive to your underlying business, because now you have the second act.
Yeah.
And so I guess the investors and I are going to have to bet on, can we generate a global business? Do people want cannabis? Can we convert it into medical and other types of products? And can we do it better than anyone else? And so far it feels like that's not a bad bet.
Well, I think people looked at that medical aspect of today and found it curious. Not that Canopy looks at the retail market and also a recreational market and looks at the medical market, but that a company like Constellation would have interest in the medical market.
Yeah, you know, it's one of these things where the marijuana plant does not know if it's medical or rec. It knows it's marijuana plant. And what you do is you take that plant, you extract the active ingredients, and you turn them into isolated ingredients, and then you reconstitute them. And if you're doing a medical trial, you run them through a procedure that you hope results in a claim and protection because of the combination of the delivery mechanism. Those same ingredients can be reconstituted into a beverage that in a medical environment, maybe you're trying to deal with someone with anxiety or depression, and maybe in a beverage market, you're trying to make Friday night cheerful and a bit uplifting. So you can sort of see where these platforms really divided the process of creating the product and confirming its result and how you package it, but there's a lot of commonality below that line.
So, you know, we've talked about the investors who are believers in the cannabis business, those who are skeptics. You told us, to your point, you were panhandling, so to speak, to raise interest a few years ago. Now the story has changed. On your conference call today, looked like representatives from Wells Fargo and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley were asking questions for a company that just saw its losses balloon to roughly $91 million in the most recent quarter. What message do you think that's sending?
Well, so on the losses, about 60 plus million of that is that funky accounting stuff where you might have a call option on something. So really not part of the operating business. So we've built up a sales force for all of Canada. We have every province and territory that's announced has selected us. And that means we have about 67,000 kilograms of product that's demanded at a minimum for the next 12 months, and Ontario hasn't announced. So what they see is that a good company is recognized by a whole bunch of provinces and authorities as being such. And that now that we've got our sleep trials going, the first animal trials in Canada, this is the company that people look at and say, okay, well, I might own 4 cannabis stocks or 3, but for sure half my money's going in Canopy. And the other ones are kind of like funny little side bets and hope they work out.
You remain one of the largest shareholders in this business. Last time I asked you if you're buying anything these days, Bruce, you're still driving your used car. You going to go out and buy a new one?
I don't think I need anything, man. I got this suit at Winners. It looks okay on TV.
You did say that.
It's true.
You did say that when it comes to shopping, you're not going to be looking for anybody here in Canada, which is quite a clear message that you're sending. How do you feel about your prospects against the other players here in Canada now?
Yeah, we have, you know, from day one, I never bothered having a rear view mirror to look back at what others were doing. And so I think there's a couple of decent actors here. They'll progress through. But you know, the problem that people are going to have if they invest in this space is there's far, far more companies than there are businesses. And what I specifically mean by that is you need to show up and work every day. And you got to create things, and you got to have scale, and you got to have an intent to create a great business. I think there's a lot of people who like the idea of a great story, and maybe they get rich. So there's going to be 2 or 3 companies that are decent out of the whole pack, and then the rest, there won't be consolidation. There's going to be disintegration. And that's a lot more painful.
We only have about 30 seconds left. Could there be a day when this company that you started here in Canada is not headquartered in Canada?
I hope not, but when you start a company, you try to make it great, and Smiths Falls is the headquarters. Sure hope Mr. Ford lets us have a amenity in what used to be the chocolate factory, so you'll come back in the next couple of weeks when tours start and visit us. But right now it looks like game on. The next several years we stand to push independently, and that means Smiths Falls headquarters.